And we continue at 1:06 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show, broadcasting live from the Morongo Casino Resort and Spa Living Room Studios. Mr. Randy Wang's at the sports desk in Culver City.
John, we have an update on the 7-Eleven in Stockton. Mayor Kevin Lincoln of Stockton claims the district attorney's office is not and never has considered the store clerks that beat up the robber to be suspects.
Slurpees all around. Let's toast.
The only person who is a suspect is the guy who threatened and attempted to rob the store clerks.
Thank God this happened in San Joaquin County and not in Los Angeles County, because you know if it happened here, George Gascon would be going after those two cashiers with everything he has.
Oh, and the mayor continues. California state law, Proposition 47, hinders businesses daily by increasing shoplifting incidents and decreasing our law enforcement's ability to hold accountable those responsible for such acts. These kinds of California state laws continue to impact communities. We will continue to monitor the incident through the judicial process.
Good for him. It's nice to see that not everyone in the state has lost their mind.
That's right. In this instance, cashier is not dummy.
If the cashier is dummy,
but Gascon is.
Quite frankly.
And that is true. We just did a fact check. All right. It is my pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the host of the Evil Thoughts podcast. You can get it online at joecrummey.com or download it wherever you download your favorite podcasts. You can also follow him on Twitter at Joe Crummey. Joe Crummey, welcome.
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm fine. We talk about, you guys are, talking about crime, et cetera, and the 7-Eleven and all of that. You and I have talked about this before. People don't seem to make the connection between the politicians and the policies that they support and the way they have to live. Like, an example, we read about how bad it is in San Francisco and all these kinds of things. I go into Walmart in Studio City, right there on Ventura and Vineland, and if you go into Walgreens, rather, and everything is locked up now. Everything. You go down every single aisle, and unless, it weighs 60 tons, it's locked up. And that's just the way it's going, and people seem to be fine with it. But it's really sad to watch people just accept that this is the way we're going to live, and this is the way we're going to shop now, that everything has to be locked up, and you have to go try to get somebody with a key to let you buy, toothpaste or whatever it is. It's really a sad commentary on that. People just don't seem to make the connection.
No, and it's interesting to look at the evolution of what got locked up when. And it always was the case where the cigarettes were behind the cashier because we didn't want people who were under the age of 21 or 18 or whatever the age is to be able to buy cigarettes. And then it became the booze, the high-end booze. We didn't have the high-end booze out there, so anyone can just pick it up and steal it. The cheap stuff, okay. High-end stuff, you need to ring the bell. Then it was the Sudafed, because people would steal the Sudafed and they'd use it to make meth. So the Sudafed went behind the counter over at the pharmacy. And then just all of a sudden, after 47, shampoo is behind bulletproof glass, and everything is behind bulletproof glass.
That is true. It's funny. I was up in, where was I? Bakersfield. This was 8 months ago. We got up on a Sunday morning, and I said, I think we need a shampoo. I mean, something like shampoo, something really simple. I go to the Bakersfield market, whatever it is. Maybe it's a Rounds, whatever it is. I'm walking all around the store. Oh, mouthwash. That's what it was. I was looking for mouthwash. I walk all around the market, up one, because I don't know the market, it's Bakersfield. I go up one aisle, down another, up another, down another, up one aisle, down another, and I can't find the mouthwash. I finally find this guy, and of course, the kicker here, he goes, oh, it's locked up in front. It's mouthwash. I mean, it's like, really? Razor blades now, not the ones you can actually cut somebody with, just the plastic, that's all locked up.
How did the toiletries get locked up? Because I've seen a lot of crooks, a lot of criminals, a lot of thieves in my time, and not once have I ever said, these people look like they're obsessed with hygiene.
Well, see, they're getting hit, though. They're getting, I got to do something about that. So, I mean, that's the way it is. But, I mean, it works for, like, all these crazy issues. I was just reading today about the governor of, Massachusetts. What's her name? It's Healy, Maura Healy. They're complaining that there's so many, recent immigrants in the state of Massachusetts. She's declaring a state of emergency. She's in the same boat as Eric Adams is in New York, and we are in L.A., but, Karen Bass can probably care less about any of that. But, they never make the connection between the policies of the people that they support, this would be the Biden administration, and the problems they're experiencing. They never seem to make the connection.
Well, we're not going to be left with any place to shop at. Between the crime, between the insurance companies pulling out, not wanting to sell insurance policies because they've deemed us to be uninsurable, the taxes and the regulations, the shutdown during COVID, I don't know how any business stays afloat.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I mean, I know we're just kind of biatching here, but I mean, again, people just don't seem to. It doesn't seem to matter that there are large swaths of Sunset Boulevard now that you don't want to walk on, even during the daytime. You wouldn't feel safe, not let alone at night. The Rock and Roll Ralphs over on Sunset, it used to be kind of hip and groovy where the Guitar Center is and all that. I mean, there are people living there right out in front of Hollywood High and all this kind of stuff. You wouldn't want to walk there during the day, let alone at night. And people just don't seem to care. The same thing with the Fairfax district. After those riots in 2020, that apparently Whoopi Goldberg didn't realize happened. She was asked about it. She goes, "What are you talking about?" She didn't even know that the Fairfax district, right there, on Fairfax, where Cantor's is and all those areas, it hasn't really fully recovered. There's more trash. There's more urban blight. It's sad to see it, but people don't seem to make those connections. This is something you and I have talked about a lot. They just don't seem to notice it, or they seem to tolerate it, or whatever it is, or you just lock your windows, roll up, lock your doors, roll up your windows, and just pretend it's not there. Maybe it's sad for me to see it because I remember when Sunset Boulevard, right in that area where the Rock and Roll Ralphs is, and Guitar Center, was kind of glamorous and kind of cool. Same thing with the Fairfax area. It was very cool where Cantor's was, and that Mr. Pizza place that used to be there, all that kind of stuff, and CBS Television City or whatever that was right just south of there. Well, that was all kind of really cool and glamorous, and now it's a little seedy. It's not quite the same.
What do you think the breaking point will be? And I say that because if you go back to the 1990s, L.A. was not a fun place to live in. Because we had the riots, we had a crime rate that was going through the roof, our economy was in shambles with the end of the Cold War and all the people in the aerospace industry getting laid off. That movie Falling Down pretty much told you everything you needed to know about Los Angeles at that time in the 1990s. And then Polly Klaas got abducted. She got kidnapped by Richard Allen Davis. She got sexually assaulted. She got murdered. And it was like that one crime, that one incident just woke the public up. And people just said, all right, enough is enough. Let's do 3 strikes. Let's get rid of all of these mayors that are soft on crime. Let's bring in Dick Reardon. Let's bring in different people who are going to lock these people up. And suddenly L.A. became a great place to live and a safe place to live.
And now what? Look where we are now, though. It's 180 degrees out of phase with all of that. It is amazing. I don't know whether, I remember the race baiting going on during the OJ trial. I remember that. That was post the riots the first time. I remember that. I remember being on the air at KABC and having to drive home and seeing that this town was a tinderbox at the time. And it's a sad thing to see. I mean, I don't know why people don't make those connections. We don't have to live like this, but apparently we're going to tolerate it. And it's a great question. When did it happen? All I know is that it happened. And let me say this. I think the state of California peaked right around 1990, sometime there. And I also think that's when the United States, as a going concern, peaked. I think the country peaked when California peaked. And it's a little different. It's not like I've given up on the country. I'm not going to pull a Megan Rapinoe, and not stand for the national anthem. Boy, what a moron she is. I mean, she turned her team into the Bud Light of soccer. I mean, that is really funny. It takes some doing, too. But, I think the country peaked. It doesn't mean we can't turn the ship around. I don't want to sound too negative on your show, John, because this is the Fix California Hour. I mean, it is somehow people have to get educated and understand that there is a connection between the people that they vote into office, right, and the life that they're going to live at the time. There's got to be some way to make that connection.
You know what I think it is? I think in part it's technology. Because all of us have iPhones, because all of us are connected to the web 24/7, we don't look at ourselves as Angelenos or Californians the way that we used to. People don't pay attention to local politics. They don't pay attention to state politics. From their point of view, they make their decisions at the ballot box based on whether or not you like Donald Trump or hate Donald Trump. And if you hate Donald Trump, like so many people in the state do, what they do is vote for all the people who hate Donald Trump. And whether or not those people can competently run the government is irrelevant to them. That's the way that they vote, and that's the way that they'll continue to vote. And I don't know how we break them of that.
It's a tough thing. And a lot of it is that, you watch people crossing the street and they're not even looking around anymore. They just got their faces in their iPhone. I see that all the time. We've all seen this. You see two people having a nice intimate dinner. They're both on phone, not even talking to each other. That we were noticing that 15 years ago. And now, I see people crossing the street with, cars left and right, and they're not even looking around. They just got their nose buried in their phone, and they're elsewhere. Distractions are, I think, part of it, John. We're distracted. I understand that. Not everybody's like you or me, and that your job is to actually pay attention to all this stuff every day. People have lives they've got to live. They got to pay their decent bill. They got to feed the cat. They got to do that. We all have our lives to lead, and I think that the powers that be thrive. The less we pay attention, the more they like it. And I also think that I've been hearing people talk about, I heard Joe Scarborough, MSNBC yesterday, talking about what's going to be the big issue in 2024. Let me ask you, what do you think he said? I'm just asking you. Just to say,
democracy. Democracy. On MSNBC and CNN, that's all they care about right now.
Or racism or climate change.
Yeah.
Those are all great answers. But no, he's talking about abortion. And I think what may happen is we're going to get distracted with that. I'm not saying abortion isn't an issue. It is an issue, and it's worth talking about. But if it boils down to that, it's roughly akin to what you were talking about. You either hate Trump or like Trump, and that's what it is. That's as deep as you go. If abortion is as deep as you go, then you're not going to really see any changes anywhere in how you live here in Los Angeles or Cleveland or Washington or anywhere in the United States. You're not going to see any changes at all if that's how you're going to vote. They want you to be thinking like that. So watch them do it.
I'll tell you, I was in an Uber not long ago, and the driver was complaining to me about the state of California legalizing jaywalking. And he essentially said that everything got a lot more dangerous the minute that they did that, specifically with the homeless population. The homeless, they don't even bother to wait for the crosswalk. They just cross the street whenever they want to, during the day, at night, whatever, they don't care. And this driver said that he has close calls virtually every day since they did that. And I asked him who he voted for governor, and he said Gavin Newsom.
Hey, let me guess. Gavin.
That's right. And I said, well, why'd you vote for it then? And he said, well, if Joe doesn't make it, he'd be a good foil for Trump. He'd be someone who could beat Trump for president. And I said, okay, you live here now, and this guy passed this or signed this law that made your life much worse, and that's okay for you. And he said, okay, I never thought of it that way before.
What? Well, I guess you really put your finger on it. People don't make the connection. They're off. Right. And look, and let's give the people a little bit of slack. They got other stuff they got to do. It's you and I and people who listen to you and people that listen to talk radio and people listen to my podcast, Evil Thoughts. Then people that are actually thinking about this. If you're not thinking about it, you're never going to make the connection. Just on the homeless people, they talk about compassion. There's two things I want to talk about. There's, compassion, but there's not much compassion for everybody that wants to use the sidewalk, or even compassion for people that are living like they're in Calcutta 50 years ago. Where's the compassion? There's no compassion. I was back to Massachusetts and the thing about immigration. They don't make the connection that their policies are drawing all these people. They don't know what to do with them. and they're overwhelmed, and they're going to vote, the same people back in again, just the way they do here in the state of California. And the homeless thing is never going to get any better under Karen Bass. She's just going to try to spend more money buying more seedy motels. I mean, that's what she's going to do. They're never going to really look at the problem. I mean, they look at the problem. They think it somehow has something to do. I heard Merrick Garland talk about it. The reason why we have all these immigrants coming is because of climate change. I mean, this is insanity. Now, he said it. I swear he said it on a Sunday show. I go, what? And then the governor of Massachusetts today said it was because of, what was it? Oh, people don't feel safe. I'm thinking, what? That's a hell of a border policy. And when have we had the debate about that? When did we change our policy with regard to entering the United States? Where was the debate? I never heard it.
You're so right about the faux compassion, because if you own a restaurant and your restroom is not wheelchair accessible, the government will put a black helicopter over your pizzeria and have someone descend from a cable to shut you down and find you before they shut you down. However, if there's a homeless encampment on the sidewalk that blocks the ability for someone in a wheelchair to get from point A to point B without having to roll out onto the street and get run over by a car, well, that's just the way it is. That's the way the cookie crumbles. They don't care about the person in the wheelchair then.
No, they don't. It's funny. I just got some great barbecue on La Brea. A friend of mine turned me on to a place called Bloodsoe or something. It's pretty good barbecue. So we go there at 7 o'clock at night. This was just last week. It's pretty good barbecue. But nobody's parking on La Brea because I guess until 7 o'clock, it's like a no park zone or whatever it is. And I'm thinking it's really interesting. Again, it speaks to what you were saying, what the city wants to enforce and what they don't want to enforce. They're all over you if you're parking with a $100 ticket. They have and people really understand that. That's why there's no cars in front of the place. Everybody waits till 7 o'clock to go. So they want to enforce those laws, but when you have people just living in the street, that's okay. Now, somehow that never would have been tolerated 25 years ago in this town, or 30 years ago when I was a kid and I came to L.A., especially as a little neo-wannabe hippie. The first thing they told you is you don't fool around, LAPD, don't fool around with those people. This is a law and order state. And we didn't like the cops when I was a kid anyway. But you didn't see people living on the street. You didn't see that. And I don't see how that's compassionate to watch people who are shouting it at the sky and wandering around in traffic, how that's compassionate just because you give them a porta potty so 2 or 3 times during the day they can relieve themselves in a hot, stinky little box somewhere, and you walk away thinking that aren't you a great guy because you care about them.
Well, and they're like this with the environment, too. Because if you don't get your car smogged, if you have an old car and you don't get it smogged every 2 years, the state of California will not give you a permit to use that car legally in the state. They will come after you. But if you're living in a non-functioning RV and you're dumping human waste right into the street and it ends up in the ocean, they don't care.
Yeah, well, that's another an excellent point. We allow this at certain streets. I know in the Valley when I'm driving, let's say on Sherman Way, or your way out on Violent, and those places, you can just tell it's an area where that's just fine. Allow these people to live like that. I mean, I don't want to be mean to homeless people. So actually, I don't. But I mean, if I were homeless, I'd be bored out of my mind. What do these people do all day? Honestly, if I was living in an RV, I'd be going, what am I doing all day? Shouldn't I be doing something? I'd be out. By the way, Joe Biden was funny. He was talking about Bidenomics, you tweeting away or Xing away, or whatever they call it these days. And he called it, or his people, he doesn't tweet, he called it people experiencing homelessness. I thought that was great. I'm experiencing homelessness. That goes for all of us. We're all experiencing homelessness. Even if we have a home, drive down the street in L.A., you experience homelessness.
The new term is unhoused that they like to use. I hear that all the time.
Yes, unhoused. Yeah, or the houseless. I saw that. Oh, yeah, the houseless, the unhoused. Yeah, what's that about?
Joe Crummey, host of the Evil Thoughts podcast. You can get him online at joecrummey.com. Download the podcast wherever you download your favorite podcasts, and follow Joe on Twitter at Joe Crummey. Joe Crummey, thanks so much for stopping by, and have a great rest of your afternoon.
My pleasure, John, and thank you.
Likewise. And if you want to leave your friends and family out of state speechless, you can go ahead and send them a link to the podcast of our interview that we just did with Joe Crummey. And, Randy, it's easy to do.
That's right. I'll be posting this at about 2:01, 2:02, 2:03 if the computer is slow. But you go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, or find the John Phillips Show page. Or you go to Apple Podcasts, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe, download all the episodes. You can go on YouTube, search for The John Phillips Show, add to the playlist. You'll get them instantly as soon as they're posted. And then no matter what, whether it's a YouTube, whether it's a podcast, it's very easy on all of these apps to share, send us a text message, send us an email, spread the word about this show, and make someone happy.
Randy, what do you say we get an update and check in on the safety ambassadors in West Hollywood to find out how they're doing?
Ooh, this doesn't look too good.
That's pretty much the story in a nutshell.
There are WeHo safety ambassadors, the block-by-blocks in the blue uniforms that were caught doing things other than keeping the community safe. What they were doing was inspecting residents of West Hollywood with their tongues and their tonsils.
Well, maybe they think if they're on the clock and they're doing that, they have diplomatic immunity because they are ambassadors.
Security ambassadors in West Hollywood were caught on camera macking with randos, and KTLA has the story.
And security in the spotlight in West Hollywood tonight, where some ambassadors are under scrutiny for their actions in uniform. The video has prompted the company that runs the ambassador program to launch an investigation.
KTLA 5's John Finolio is live in West Hollywood with a closer look at the actions that are raising alarm. John?
What's the pickup line? Hey, can I urban your alchemy?
It's almost as if these people aren't professional.
Indy, Micah, the block-by-block security ambassadors program, they're the guys in the blue shirts that often patrol the neighborhood, sometimes acting as eyes and ears for law enforcement, sometimes...
How about actual law enforcement?
And that's being pretty presumptuous about their gender.
Patrol the neighborhood, sometimes acting as eyes and ears for law enforcement, sometimes providing safe passage for residents walking home at night. But over the weekend, two ambassadors were caught on camera engaging in some risque business that had nothing to do with public safety. The images are hardly sensational, but they appear to show two block-by-block security ambassadors engaging in some intimate behavior in West Hollywood over the weekend. This video, posted by the WeHo Times, shows the ambassadors in uniform, kissing and flirting with what appears to be two women near the intersection of Santa Monica Boulevard and La Jolla Avenue shortly before...
So wait, we're paying these guys to walk up and down the street and pick up strange?
They're lucky that light was red.
And La Jolla Avenue shortly before 1 a.m. Saturday.
I think just being a local resident, we expect more from authorities and figures of authorities to feel safe.
Raquel Vaca.
Okay, they're not authorities. They're safety ambassadors. They're buffoons.
They have absolutely no authority to do anything when two people were kicking the crap out of each other in West Hollywood.
Ooh, this doesn't look too good.
The ambassadors stood there and watched and eventually did what anyone else would do and called 911. That's what they are paid to do. Nothing. It is the appearance of safety. It is not safety, Lindsay Horvath.
Quite frankly.
No, they're not there to stop crime. They're there to be tomcats.
I think just being a local resident, we expect more from authorities and figures of authorities to feel safe.
Raquel Vaca is a West Hollywood resident who says the footage is frustrating because it reinforces her belief that the security ambassador program is ineffective.
Sometimes just as women walking on the street, we hope to look to authority to protect us from so much catcalling, from strangers. So it's like, who do we rely on? Who do we depend on at this point?
No, what we did is we hired the catcallers and put a blue uniform on them.
Where did we do the job fair for this program? A construction site?
You don't want to know where the job fairs are for these things, because if you look at the clientele that applies for the jobs of safety ambassadors in West Hollywood or Long Beach or Metro, it is the unemployable, recently incarcerated crowd.
Right. It's the quote-unquote reformed gang members.
It is a unemployable jobs program. That's what was going on now.
The video comes as the ambassador program has come under renewed scrutiny amid several violent armed robberies in recent months. In July, 3 armed suspects, 2 with handguns, the third carrying a rifle, robbed a man on the 800 block of Larrabee Street, just a few hundred feet from the LA County Sheriff's Department WeHo station. In April, 4 suspects, 1 armed with an AK-47, robbed at least 3 people outside La Boheme restaurant near Santa Monica and Orlando Avenue.
Isn't this supposed to be like the nice part of town?
It is. That's a very nice, exquisite restaurant, and the ambassadors seem to have dropped the ball.
Oh, it's about to get personal for you, Johnny.
All 4 suspects were later arrested. And late last week, 2 armed assailants robbed 2 people outside the celebrity hotspot restaurant Craig's on Melrose Avenue near Robertson Boulevard.
Now they've gone too far.
What's next, Antanas?
And late last week, 2 armed assailants robbed 2 people outside the celebrity hotspot restaurant Craig's on Melrose Avenue near Robertson Boulevard. It's unclear if the ambassadors seen in this video were on duty or on a break at the time of the recording.
I'm just going to clock out for a second so we can make out.
Does it really matter? Because if you're in uniform and you're in public, you're not supposed to be doing that. You know, if you're a pilot for an airline and you're not flying the plane, but you're in uniform, you still can't go to the bar and start doing shots. Because if people see a uniformed pilot doing shots, they're going to freak out and think that the pilot in their plane is drunk.
The Block by Block program issuing a statement saying in part that an investigation is underway, and Block by Block ambassadors are expected to always conduct themselves in a professional manner. All investigations are handled internally. This incident is being investigated by our on-site management and will be addressed accordingly through our company policy.
Are they an ex-con too?
This is like a New Deal program for ex-cons.
While some residents are critical of the Block by Block program, others say they're happy with it, but would like to see better behavior.
There should be some training that's going on to say this is what's proper, this is what's not.
Yeah, but what is their actual job?
They're ex-cons. You should just be thanking your lucky stars that they're not the ones holding people up with an AK-47.
This is like the most backward-assed way around to get to universal basic income. That policy's not going to go through, so we're going to hire all the unemployable to do absolutely nothing and tell you that you're safe.
But tell the public that they are there to look out for you, when in fact they just got out of the joint for robbing you.
All right, the WeHo Times reports that a West Hollywood resident recorded that video and sent it to the WeHo Times over concerns about public safety. Plenty of folks we've been speaking with out here say they would like to see more sheriff's patrols instead of these block-by-block ambassador personnel. Of course, others say that they're plenty happy with the program. Again, an investigation is underway into this latest incident. We're live in West Hollywood. I'm John Fenolio, sending it back to you in the studio.
There we go.
Maybe it was our man on the street in West Hollywood who recorded them secretly.
Ooh, this doesn't look too good.
He is not a fan.
No. If you want to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Barbara writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com about the WeHo safety ambassadors.
Ooh, this doesn't look too good.
If the safety ambassadors are wearing blue uniforms, they could probably get a second job while they're walking the block by block as Scientologists giving out personality tests.
Well, and they could find new dates when they're doing the auditing.
Maybe the defense was, we're supposed to be the eyes and ears. They didn't say anything about my tongue.
Well, and that's just what was visible. What do you think the safety ambassadors were doing in the back seat of the car? Randy, we're getting more details out of the state of Hawaii surrounding this horrific fire that is burning through the island of Maui right now. Apparently, the 911 system is now down. People are fleeing the fire into the sea because there's no place to go. This fire is absolutely brutal, and they can't use the helicopters to drop water on the fire because of heavy winds. So the fire is just burning uncontrolled, and there's not much that they can do to stop it.
That's why we're seeing just uncontrolled devastation. Homes, almost half of all of the town of Lahaina looks to be burned to the ground, especially the iconic Front Street. We're just now getting reports about the loss of life as well. At least 6 people have been declared dead. I'm sure that number is going to go up. It is an absolute disaster.
And if you're thinking that there are ferries, passenger ferries, that will take people from one island to the next, from Maui to, let's say, Kauai or Oahu or one of the other neighboring islands, that is not the case. You cannot do that. It is prohibited by law for passengers to move from one island to another by ferry because the official reason is they don't want to damage the marine life, the whales, those sorts of things. But in reality, the organization, the company that does the most lobbying in front of the Hawaii state legislature is Hawaiian Airlines. And if they bar you from traveling from island to island by ferry, then you have to buy a plane ticket on Hawaiian Airlines or a couple of their competitors. It wasn't until very recently that Southwest Airlines started flying to the state of Hawaii, and now you can go from island to island on Southwest. But Hawaiian Airlines, for a very long time, had a de facto monopoly on that market, and they regulated themselves into a monopoly. So no easy way to get off the island of Maui unless you've got a plane ticket.